Good afternoon, my turtle ducks. Thank you for coming to this very special holiday tea. It's Yule, or the winter solstice. Today, we have mulled cider and sugar cookies. For this very special holiday tea, I thought we might talk about Yule and the winter solstice. You might wonder then, what and when is Yule? Technically, Yule has become a bit of an umbrella term for a number of pagan holidays ranging most of the month of December and into the first 2 days of January. However, it is very common to celebrate on the winter solstice, which is typically either December 20th or 21st, depending quite literally on the alignment of the stars. Personally, I like to look it up each year, but if the star alignment is not as important to your practice, or a standard day each year is just more convenient, then that's all you need. The winter solstice is the longest night of the year, though the length can vary pretty widely depending on where you are. The farther from the equator, the more drastic it will be. At its most basic and global level, Yule is the celebration of the dark gifts of winter and the return of light. There are many interesting myths regarding the return of the sun or the return of the king. My favorite myths usually involve the defeat of the Holly King by the Oak King to win the favor of his beloved and start the steady return of spring. Yule and the winter solstice are also times to celebrate surviving, as it is traditionally midway through winter. As our seasons shift due to climate change, we may find need to move about our holidays to better fit the rhythm of the world, but for now, we still see this as the turning point. Winter has peaked and will slowly decline into spring. Winter makes the world a quiet place. The only thing I like about winter, if I'm honest, is how everything feels like it's sleeping. I don't often quote books directly on this channel, but I really liked this quote. It's the time when Mother Earth goes quiet, yet if we listen really carefully, we can still hear her heart beating. Llewellyn's Sabbat Essentials, Yule. Yule and Christmas are once again slowly becoming a time of raucous parties, playful pranks, and mischief. Though it suffered a bit under the rigid demands of the early church and capitalists, the spirit of lively celebration never quite left the holiday. It is slowly gaining traction again as partying becomes increasingly secular, inviting, and a good excuse to distract each other from the winter blues. I myself am rather guilty of treating Yule in a more somber, quiet way, but I prefer that of most of my holidays, and there is nothing wrong with celebrating in one's own preferred way. The primary themes of Yule are survival, community, opposites and mischief, death, birth, and renewal. Although it is easy to forget with readily available grocery stores and strip malls, even now there are still people and places for whom winter is a lean time, where only the bounty of summer, preserved and saved over autumn, will see them through to spring. Food deserts are still a problem, child poverty and malnourishment, even in places as overall wealthy as the United States. There are thousands of families and people for whom winter will be slim and dangerous. Survival will always be a part of winter, and we should celebrate when we survive. It's much easier, I think, to understand celebrating community. Humans are innately social animals. Were we not as wildly social as we are, we never would have come as far as we have. Our communities not only help us to survive, but also to thrive, and our ability to choose our community and even choose to be in multiple communities is part of what makes us so interesting. So I hope you make plenty of time to celebrate with all the communities that support you and make you feel like a welcome addition. Along the line of community, revelry and swapping of social status was a big part of Yule and Christmas, when common people would come together to drink, sing, dance, and terrorize the rich and powerful, or make demands such as food, money, or other boons, or generally show their displeasure without much fear of repercussion. In some traditions, lords would serve their servants while their servants acted as lords for one day. Finally, death, birth, and renewal. This is probably the most varied, as representatives of each facet may be different depending on what individual gods or groups of gods an individual follows. But in our physical lives, there are a number of material shows of this. Most deciduous, annual, and even perennial plants die back or go into a dormant state and may appear dead on the surface. Meanwhile, many evergreen plants and winter perennials and annuals are beginning to pop up or bloom. If you have a garden, this might be when you go to plant alums, brassicas, tubers, or bulbs, all of which will grow or begin growing long before spring. A number of animals are also typically pregnant in the winter. Most ruminants, such as deer, goats, sheep, and cow, domesticated animals and pets particularly may become pregnant as their food supplies do not disappear quite the same way as their wild counterparts. Renewal may be the most difficult to see, but as we gather for parties or quiet celebrations at home, we renew our relationships, personal projects, or goals. The more we are aware of these things, the more intentional we can be about them, and the more we can gain from them. Let's touch on traditions next. There are so many traditions for each religion, household, organization, and community we may be a part of, so I'll touch on just the broadest traditions here. The first, and probably the most well known, is gift giving. Whether you give gifts to friends, families, co-workers, strangers, the gods, or your local spirits, you have probably engaged in this tradition. There really is nothing quite like giving a gift and seeing the delight on someone's face, or receiving a thoughtful gift that you know exactly what to do with. Gifts are a staple of the winter holiday season. Decorating, and specifically a tree, whether you like to have a tree inside or prefer to decorate trees for the birds and winter wildlife with popcorn and peanut butter pine cones, there is little quite so recognizable around most of the world as a tree festooned in lights, baubles, and ribbon. Those who do not have trees likely still have some sort of greenery and lighting that takes center stage in their decorating. Decorating is entirely up to the person doing it, but the most thematic materials are evergreens, candles, or electric lights, and reminders of what we celebrate, be it family, the gods, or your specific community. Feasting is another fairly universal tradition of this time. Those that have are encouraged to share, so that we may all survive and eat well during the passage of midwinter. Families and friends gather together to cook and eat. Kind-hearted people with time or resources to spare help feed those who are not as lucky or who have been left behind by their community. While anything you can afford to make your feast is fine, the most thematically appropriate foods would be winter squashes, potatoes, alums, beans, and meats. Apples and citrus are wonderful for drinks and desserts. The Yule log is much more specific to, well, Yule. It should be carved from a very hard wood. Oak is the most preferable and may have depictions of the crone or other mythical winter figures carved or drawn into it. Wishes may be written on paper or the log. It may also be anointed with fragrant oils from evergreens, alcohols like whiskey, ale, or mead, and burned on midwinter night. It is considered a good omen if it burns until sunrise. If it is reasonable within work or other obligations, it is also within tradition to spend all night watching the Yule log burn and trading stories or practice whatever winter magic you feel needs doing. The last tradition I'll touch on here is looking forward into the new year. What sort of things do you want to do next year? How might you approach new opportunities? It is simply a good time to think of broad, unhurried plans. There will be time for specific timetables, But for now, it is good to think about the whole picture. What things did you decide to let go during Mabon and Samhain? Have you swept them from your home and life? With the new ready space, what sort of things are you ready to bring in? If you'd like to learn more on what I touched on, you can read the book I pulled most of this information from, Llewellyn's Sabbat Essentials, Yule. Now, what do we do at Baba's house? Yule is a very socially expensive time for us. We have almost as many people coming to visit us as we go to visit ourselves. There are gifts to be made and given almost all month, accumulating usually on the winter solstice when we give our offerings to the gods and the spirits of our land. Because we have only recently moved into a large house where we feel we will be staying a while, our decoration stores have been fairly meager, mostly consisting of a few ornaments and a holiday wreath. However, we will likely decorate more now that we have a place to store more decorations. We also like to watch holiday movies, though we really only watch more secular ones as we haven't found much in the way of fun Yule specials. I remain hopeful more will be made. Going forward, I really would like to decorate some outdoor wildlife trees with garlands of popcorn and dried fruit and peanut butter birdseed pinecone ornaments, though I think it may be prudent to begin making them at the end of November. I also want to try burning a Yule log. I don't know if we'll have the materials to make one this year, but at least for next year, I would definitely like to do it. Papa and I also discussed a little bit about incorporating a fun singing game either before or after opening presents, taken from the song Just What I Always Wanted from the Rankin Bass Jack Frost. Well, that's all I have time for today. It's time to go eat, drink, and be merry with your papa. Thank you for coming to this very special tea. Stay warm, have a wonderful Yule, and I'll see you next time. Until then, be kind, my turtle ducks, to each other and to yourselves.